Welcome to the 54th episode of the GameFor Podcast. In this episode, still recording from home, we'll talk about superstitions in tabletop gaming. I'm Adam.
And I'm Matt.
And this is the GameFor Podcast. GameFor is a platform to help connect tabletop gamers and to help you get more out of your tabletop gaming. Matt and I are part of a software development and design company called Milkcan. And because most of the folks at Milkcan love tabletop games, we developed the GameFor app and launched it in early 2018. We launched this companion podcast in June 2019 to help tabletop gamers get more enjoyment out of their hobby. Due to the COVID-19 global pandemic, we hibernated the GameFor app in July of 2020 and plan to bring back a retooled version of the app for Android, iOS, and web when gaming in person is safer. Until then, we'll keep bringing you this podcast to help you get more out of your tabletop gaming. I'm a bit sniffly this morning, I think.
Yeah.
We normally record in the afternoon, and but with scheduling, we've got to do it in the morning, so it's a bit different today.
Yes, an allergy season.
Yeah, that too. We've had, and it's been nice. So we've had the windows open the last couple of days, but then allergy season, yes, indeed. How's your hobby stuff been going since the last episode?
Pretty good. I've actually been getting more and more time, so that means now that I'm talking about it, I'm gonna get less time or something, right? Because it's superstitions.
Exactly.
But I actually got paint on plastic, or I should say resin, because I was painting up a few 3D printed models I had Zenithal highlighted months ago.
Nice.
That I just have been kind of staring at. I'm like, I don't know if I could paint these, or maybe I need to touch up. I don't know. Then I finally just decided to put paint on them, and they're going pretty good. So
that's frequently the trick, is to sometimes just start. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because you can talk yourself out of it.
Right, exactly. I got the new Army Painter Metallics set.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I hadn't tried it out. So I was trying like the purple last night, and on a female sorcerer, because she had kind of armor underneath her cloak, and it came out really nice. And then I went and opened up a bunch of the other ones. I was putting like the mixing balls in them, and found out that like most of them were dried out, and I've not even opened them before, so I don't know what's going on. Yeah, I'm hoping that they just maybe got separated weird, and that mixing them up will get everything good again. But yeah, it's really odd. So
that's strange.
Yeah, I've never had problems.
I don't think I have that metallic set that they came out with. Yeah, no.
Yeah, the colors are really nice, but yeah, a couple of them were like just it had like you could almost pull the whole paint out of the bottle, like the top half, and then it was like all liquid on bottom. So yeah. I don't know.
I mean, they can separate pretty well, and I would definitely try to shake them up good if you got the ability.
So,
do you have like a vortex mixer or anything like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I put the ball in there and then started mixing them up, and then I'm playing around with it and stuff. So we'll see. I don't think they're lost yet. They're just going to be a little bit more fussy than I'm used to or something.
I've got some Army Painter airbrush medium, which, I mean, obviously you're not trying to airbrush this stuff, but it would be it might be a thinner that could help. I could.
I've got some. I didn't think about that. I do have some airbrush medium as well.
The stuff from Army Painter.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That stuff's nice. I like it for like just being able to add some drops to thin it down so that it goes into airbrush a little bit better.
Yeah, I didn't think about
the Army
that.
Painter stuff.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'll have to try that out. But yeah, I did that, and then I was gap filling and cleaning up a bunch of my assembled pieces, Legion and Blood Bowl, so that I have no more excuses of why I can't prime them.
Sure, yeah.
But I was using that Bondic thing that you showed me it's basically almost like the 3D resin stuff, like it's UV cured resin, and it comes out like a little pen, and you basically just kind of fill it in and shine. I did that, and I actually cleaned up a bunch of the 3D buildings I had built as well. So got them, because some of them are actually really large, so they're in multiple pieces, even with the larger format.
So like 3D printed stuff, like
they're all 3D printed. They have like houses and like one's in a giant blacksmith area and stuff. So I got them all assembled by the floor, because they were like 3 or 4 pieces per floor. So I got them kind of glued down by the floor and then filled in all the gaps so that those can be painted as well. So
Nice.
yeah, so
Yeah.
getting there, priming, getting ready for in-person play again.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Same here.
how about
Um,
you?
yeah, let's see, what did I get done? I worked on Games Workshop's got a new version of Age of Sigmar coming out soon, which is third edition, and they're going to have a starter box that is going to be launched. I think it's going to be in stores early July,
Okay.
and it's called Dominion, and it's a big chunkin box of a lot of plastic and their new fancy book and all that kind of stuff. And
Mm.
so it's Stormcast Eternals, which are basically the good guys, versus orcs, which I guess no one was super surprised by, except these new orcs are very different than the old kind of like orcs.
Yeah.
In Age of Sigmar, they're kind of different in that they are more. I don't want to say realistic because they're orcs, and that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But they're not as cartoony. Let's say they've got
Yeah,
like
they're
skinnier kind of arms, and they look a
mhm.
little bit more. A lot of people have said they look like Lord of the Rings orcs a little bit.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
like
So yeah, they're interesting, and so I built three of those after my stream on Friday, and then primed them up Friday night, and then I painted them on Saturday quick because I made a video about the box set that went up Sunday night, and so yeah, I did those three guys, and they were a lot of fun. I kind of really quickly painted them, but they turned out well. I did mostly contrast, but there's also some metallics and some opaque paints in there a little bit as
mhm.
well. But yeah, so I got that done, and on Twitch, I have been painting. I've started a new Demon Cabal for Rain in Hell for the game,
Mm.
and it is made up entirely of Games Workshop models. So it is. I've got an armored demon and a corpulent demon and two slaughter fiends and a mephit, and then I need a devout, because I'm using the brokers as my philosophy, therefore I need a tallyman. So I've already got an idea what model I'm going to use for that.
Nice.
And I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to use for my leader. I think I might have gotten it figured out, but I'm not quite
Okay.
sure. So there's just a bunch of different models in there. There's like some Nurgle kind of stuff from a Beastgrave warband. There's some bloodletters. Those are my slaughter fiends. My
Okay.
mephit is the little tiny. He's like an imp basically from the Cursed City set. He's a little tiny dude with like wings, and he's like
Oh,
carrying a little
nice. Okay.
tiny like chest of coins for some reason. So, yeah. So they're all like those are all built and in progress. But like I said, the devout and the leader, I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do. I know what I'm going to do for the devout, but I haven't figured out what to do with the leader yet. So
Nice.
that's
Yeah, I'm
still
still
in
trying to
progress.
piece mine together. I
Hmm.
actually bought a box of the Crypt Flyers from Age of Sigmar
Oh yeah.
just because I was like, oh, I like those. And then I found a cool in the back of our local game store at the 50% off table. Found
Hmm.
there's a set of some, I don't even know what game it is, but it was like old metallic minis, and one was like a little play piece that looks like a door with teeth and stuff coming out of it that
Okay.
I could use for just train. It looked
Hmm.
very hellish. And
Sure.
then it had like a nice character with lots of like tentacles and horns and all kinds of stuff coming out of it that I figured uh, would be versatile. So
Yeah. Yeah, I was going through last night. We put up a new blog post on the website for the game about the different models that we used in the book. So like
mm,
people look at the artwork. We had that we Vince and I painted up a bunch of different models and then photographed them and then gave them to Scott from Artists Empire, who did the digital paint overs to make them look like paintings basically, and they look amazing. He's actually got in this month's White Dwarf Games Workshop's big magazine, he's got a multi-page kind of article in there where he's got a whole bunch of paint overs in White Dwarf, and like he's got a tutorial about like how to do that stuff and everything, and it's
oh,
really
nice.
cool. So yeah, he's really picking up steam. So I'm glad that we were able to get him to do the paint overs for our stuff. But anyway, as I was looking through and getting the links for all the different 3D printed stuff, I was looking at all the different companies out there like Rocket Pig and Lord of the Prince and all that kind of stuff. And I was
Mm.
just like, I got to get my 3D printer set up because there's so many. I mean, there's so many amazing models out there that could go into Demon Cabals like really
Mm-hmm.
easily. So yeah, absolutely. And then speaking of the game, thankfully, uh, the print version is now finally back for sale again.
Yay.
Yeah. Tell me about it. Basically, what happened was, I don't know if we talked about this last time or not, but basically what happened was there were some typos in the game, and when you update the digital version, it's pretty much instantaneous. You just go, oh, here's a new PDF, and it's like, okay, cool. But when you want to update the print version, at any time when you want to load a file for a print version, whether it's the first time or whether it's the 10th time, it has to go through this whole process
Right.
where they have to run some software on it to make sure it's good, and then the print company has to run some software on it. It's called pre-flighting and all this stuff, and then you have to order an actual physical print, which has to get mailed to you, and you have to look at it and eyeball it and go, yep, that looks good, and then you can okay the proof, and then they can start doing it. Well, we asked, because the game had already been launched, if we update this, is it going to goof up the current availability of print sales on the current game? And they were like, no, it shouldn't. Well, it instantaneously did. The minute we uploaded the new file, you couldn't buy the print version anymore. And in the past,
You
when
would
we've
think they would know that.
yeah, you would. Well, the thing that's interesting, honestly, about a lot of those places, especially like places like Drive Through RPG and we're using Wargame Vault, which is the same company, but it's under the
Yep.
same umbrella. The thing that's interesting is that I would say only maybe about 15% of all titles are actually available in print, because it's more work on the producer's
right.
side. You have to kind of do things differently to make it work for print than you do for digital. And I think a lot of people are just like, well, let's just not bother. But honestly, I got to say, we've wildly outsold print version versus digital only version. A lot of people like the print. So I think it's worth the extra work. That all being said, you haven't been able to buy it in print for about 2 weeks, actually, because in the past, when we've had to go through that whole process of the one company checking it, the print company checking it, us getting a proof, that's usually taken about a week. But this time, for reasons, it took 2 weeks, and so that sort of sucked. So it's all fixed now. New version is up. And the only changes, like I said in the past, there was just some typos. There was a chart where there were 2 things that were swapped. But if you went through the text further on, like in the next page, everything was right. So the chart was, you could kind of just ignore the chart. And there was a scenario with a stat missing, which we put up a PDF on the website that you can just download that page again if you want to. So everything's in there, but it's all ready to go again finally. So
Nice.
That's been good. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. All right. So the topic for today, we're talking about superstitions in tabletop gaming. And I think that basically, in my opinion, and let me know what you think about this, but any endeavor that does rely on luck will be fraught with superstition. There's obviously superstitions about all kinds of things, walking under a ladder, black cat, this and that and whatever. But in gaming, because if you're playing a game that has no luck in it,
right,
which there's not a lot of, but there are some, like chess. I don't know if there's a lot of superstition in chess. That's a good question.
Oh yeah, there's people that were like, "Oh, I have to be white. It's not lucky for me to be black or
well, white gets to go
vice
first. I
versa."
mean, there's an actual thing there, isn't there?
Well,
but that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, even with the order, we have to use. Oh, this is my lucky chess set. I always play better with this chess set.
Yeah, I guess there is that even then too. But definitely with games that actually rely on luck, like card games, obviously, but role-playing games, miniature games, things with dice. That's a big deal there. So yeah, I mean, let's just do the hack thing where you say, well, what is superstition? Definition of superstition is a widely held but unjustified belief in supernatural causation leading to certain consequences of an action or event, or a practice based on such a belief. That's much more clear now, isn't it?
Right.
Indeed.
It's but yeah, I was thinking, what made me think about this topic was watching some playoff hockey. And in hockey, playoff hockey for NHL, for those that don't follow it, basically it is unlucky to shave during the playoff run. So you're not allowed to shave until your team has been eliminated. So every team, all the players start getting what they call the playoff beard. and stuff
Hmm.
because they're growing it out and stuff, and it's kind of a sign of how well you're doing by how great your beard became and
Right.
stuff.
Yeah. My wife's been watching playoff hockey, and so yeah, I just actually noticed that last night. I was just thinking about that. I'm like, oh, that's right. I got playoff beards. So
Hmm.
yeah, there's a lot of that in all kinds of different things, and I guess well, we'll talk a little bit later about what is it good or bad, superstition
Hmm.
or anything like that. But definitely, like I said, in within our kind of gaming aspect, a lot. I would say a good portion of the superstition that's in tabletop gaming does surround dice.
Yeah.
Um, and we looked up an article. We were looking around, kind of doing some research, and we came across an article from Geek and Sundry from like about 5 years ago or so, from Courtney Kraft, and it was talking about the folks from Critical Role.
Hmm.
And Critical Role, they're famous RPG folks, and it's really brought about kind of a renaissance in RPG stuff, I think, to some degree, a lot more interest in it and everything like that. But a lot of those folks have very specific um, superstitions about dice and things like that. So I thought we could kind of go through some of them and kind of talk about like what we think about those things, whether we've done those things, whether we know people or played with people who've done
Hmm.
those things, that kind of stuff. Um, one, and I've seen this for years. One of the things is don't roll the dice before you need it because you'll use up your good rolls. I've
Oh
I've
yeah.
seen people sit there and just like roll dice to just see if this is a good die or not, and then someone else is be like, well, you're going to use up all the good rolls. And I'm like,
Oh yeah. I mean, if they're rolling ones and stuff like that, nobody says anything. But if they see them roll like a 20, they're like, "Oh, that was going to be saved for later." Everybody,
right, exactly. And then, contradictory to this is then you also are supposed to roll out the bad rolls before you need the dice. So
Mm,
you should roll out the bad rolls, but other people are saying, well, don't roll out the good rolls. And yeah, a lot of these, obviously, like the whole concept of superstition, the super part has to do with supernatural causation.
mhm,
And what that means is that these things don't actually generally exist. You know what I mean? Like that's like no one can prove that you can roll out the bad rolls or the good rolls. That's kind of not how dice work. There are dice that will roll better than others, but that's because they're imperfect. That's
mhm,
because like, and I think we've talked about this relatively recently, but the process of, the reason your dice are nice and smooth and rounded on the corners is because they get thrown into basically something like a rock tumbler after they
right.
get manufactured, and that smooths the corners down. But it also has a tendency to make them maybe just slightly lopsided. And then some die, if you find a die that rolls better for you frequently, you're going to favor that die, and it will seem like you were a lucky roller when in fact you just have dice that are just a little, And then we talked about how like the casino dice and stuff like that all have sharp
Right.
edges. That's why, so that they're perfectly all the same size.
Yep. Yeah, I think it was our
Um,
randomness episode.
yes, exactly, yeah. So, and then the another thing is about how your first set of dice is sacred, and you should never
Ooh.
discard or mix them with other dice. I can't
Uh-oh.
think of my first dice like set. Like I don't. I've been doing this a long time. I don't. I have some
Yeah.
dice I know are older than others, but I don't know which my first dice set was. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't have mine for sure.
Hmm.
But that being said, I do have a friend that has been playing since the original Red Box, and he has the dice from the Red Box, and
Dungeons and
a
Dragons
great
Red Box.
yeah, a
Hmm.
great number of them are round. Like,
Oh yeah, no, I posted a picture on I think on my Tabletop Minions Instagram years ago. A friend of mine showed me a die he had, and I posted a picture of it, and it was a D20 that was just about a marble. It was just
mhm,
round, just no corners on it anymore. Because those are early dice too. Those early polyhedrals
yeah,
were just made out of garbage. They were like not
right,
good plastic at all and stuff. And so yeah, they did definitely break down over overuse.
hmm,
Um, let's see here. Once you have a good roll, then don't let the dice sit idle for too long, otherwise it'll get cold. I guess I've never done anything like that. I've never really been
no.
like, you know what I mean?
I see. I've
Um,
been more like I don't want to touch it until I'm ready to use it again. Let it sit
oh,
there
okay,
and bask in the 20 that it rolled or something else, so that it knows that it will do that again.
sure. I mean, and that's right now. Like these next ones, always lay your dice with the lowest number facing up. I don't know what, but then immediately after that, it says always lay your dice with the highest possible number facing up. So
Hmm.
again, contradictions. Different people think you need to do different things. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess I have probably just like if you're, especially if you're playing an RPG and it's like not your time to interact in some way, I
Hmm.
have sat there and like messed with my dice. We had a friend that we used to play Shadowrun with, and he would stack his dice and just
Mm.
kind of build a tower until they would fall down and go all over the place, and then we would be like, dude, and then he'd be like, oh, because he would just get bored.
Yeah,
Um,
I've been
you
wondering
know what I
about
mean?
that. If some of these are like were said as bad luck as a way to like get the kids to knock it off.
Yeah,
Like
potentially. Oh yeah, no, I mean,
yeah,
it's
don't keep
is
rolling your
it
dice. You're going to use them up, so the guy's not sitting over there rolling his dice the whole time.
right? Exactly. It's like a fidget spinner or something like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. But I have like yeah, I maybe put them in order sometimes, but again, it's just fidgety. It's not like, oh, this is a
Hmm.
superstition. This will make these dice, um, work better. Never allow anyone else to roll your dice. Sharing is not caring. Sharing lets in the monstrous bad luck demon that makes you roll poorly. Uh,
Yeah. I
I
don't.
know a
Don't
lot of people who are like, yeah, don't touch my dice. I've never. I don't know. I don't think I'm very superstitious at all. I think that's part of the issue, but I've
oh,
seen it
see.
certainly.
Yeah, I don't actually mind letting people use my dice, but I won't let them use the dice I'm currently using. Like if I have extra dice, they can use that, but not the dice I'm using. That's horrible.
Yeah, I can understand that.
But that might be a
Um,
more of a germaphobe thing. I don't know.
well,
I don't
these
think
days,
so.
yeah.
Mm.
No, I could see that. Specific dice are used for specific situations. There's one D20 that's used for attacks, and a D20 for saving throws, and a different D20 for skill checks, and
Mm.
D20 to seduce red-haired, one-eyed, bearded dwarven women named Irene. That's very specific. That's a lot of
Yeah.
D20s. I would say that, yeah. Well, again, that might be just a function. If you know that you have a D20 that rolls low and you need to roll low for
Right.
some reason, and you have another D20 that has a tendency over time as you've been using it to roll high, well, then then I could see using different dice for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, my
I had a
D6s, I
friend.
have a few that I'm like, okay, these usually seem to roll high. These ones usually seem to roll low, and I'll do that. But I've never, I think the ones that are like, oh, these are specific for this and this and this are probably lies propagated by the dice company.
Sure, that could be. I could see that. I've got a friend who, as a DM, used to use different dice depending. Like if he's like, if the party is about to croak, he switches to different dice because he knows that they have a tendency to roll. He feels they have a tendency to roll lower, and
Hmm.
then it's less likely that he's going to kill off the party. Which the party I'm sure appreciates for sure. A new die must be tested. Keep the new die separated. Roll it 25 times. Count the number of times the max roll appears versus the minimum roll. If the maximum is greater, it's a successful turnout. Repeat this process. This is a lot of work. I don't know if I got that kind
Yeah,
of time.
wow.
If the die fails 3 times, get rid of it. Oh, did you pay $400 for that D20 made of sterling silver? Too bad it's trash. No, see, I think that if you are a person who is part of Critical Role, then you can decide to trash a $400 D20, but the rest of us are not even going to buy a $400 D20. And that's
No, probably not.
so I say I'm not superstitious, but I do sometimes believe in at least like Murphy's Law. A couple of years ago, I was considering making a short mini documentary about dice, and I still may do it eventually, but COVID kind of shut it down, so I couldn't do interviews at conventions. But I had done some talking to some people, and I had done some short interviews. I think you helped me out with one, or at least one or two at
Yeah.
mm,
Gamma or
well,
Origins?
maybe Gamma, and also Gamehole Con in Madison.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, yeah. But I was at Origins talking to one of the big dice manufacturers, or one of the more boutique dice manufacturers, and I was asking him about different dice and things like that, and he reached into the pocket on his apron thing and pulled out a single D6 that he had like in a little Ziploc bag that was made out of a fossilized piece of dinosaur bone. It was like a
Hmm.
standard, 16 millimeter D6, but it was made out of an actual fossilized piece of dinosaur bone. And I asked him how much it cost, and he said it was $100. And I immediately thought to myself, if I buy $100 D6, it will never roll well for my entire life. It will always roll once. Like that's just kind of the way it's going to work. Is that
Yeah.
superstition? Yeah, probably a little bit, but
Hmm.
it's maybe more superstition just based off of pessimism. I don't know. So yeah,
It depends if it was a good dinosaur or a bad dinosaur. But I think $100 for a dinosaur, like just to have the story when you pull out the die every time, totally worth
right,
it.
yeah, like this is a piece of like a dinosaur that was walking around doing dinosaur stuff, you know?
Yeah, that compared to paying 4 times that for just a silver die, like
I mean, silver. What did silver do? Nothing. I mean, I guess
get,
you could throw
get
it
rid
at
of
like a werewolf or something like
yeah.
that. Maybe
Hmm.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I've never gone through a process of rolling 25 times and doing the math and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I know there are machines out there that that will like roll dice. It's like a
Hmm.
almost looks like a conveyor belt sort of thing. And they'll sit there and roll dice, and the little camera will then figure out what the and then they can kind of. It's for science. I don't know exactly. I've seen pictures of it before. But it was designed. I don't remember if it was designed to actually test dice or if it was designed to try to randomize numbers for computer stuff.
Oh, sure,
I know
yeah.
they also use lava lamps for that too.
Hmm.
Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, yeah. I think
Yeah,
we
they have like
talked
a
about
wall
that.
full of
Yeah.
lava lamps, right? Yeah, and there's like webcams on them and stuff like that. But yeah, I just I don't have that kind of time. 25 times and write down a bunch of numbers. It's just a lot of work.
Yeah.
If the status of the die's luck is in question, keep it separated from the rest of the dice, lest it bring down the luck of the others. And then we follow up immediately with, on the other hand, some believe that mixing a single unlucky die with several lucky ones will make it roll better.
Ah, yes.
Are you separating it to make it think about what it did, like what it did wrong, or are
Hmm.
you separating it so it doesn't infect the other ones? I don't know that there's a lot of dice physiology. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if that's a thing, but
Right.
some people seem to think it is. I don't know.
Yeah, that kind of started to sound like astrology at that point, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Like, like,
Like do you just keep your dice together in a bag or like some sort of thing, or do you separate them out and everything?
um, I actually will usually, I store them in a bag, and then when I get to where I am, I usually like dump them out and then pick the ones I want to use, and then
Hmm.
I just kind of keep them in a little pile someplace handy. So yeah, I don't really. Yeah, if there's multiple D20s, the one I'm currently rolling is separated just because
Sure.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess. See, I am more superstitious than I want to believe because
Right. You know what I mean?
I
Yeah.
do I
It's.
do like, oh, I'm gonna keep rolling this one. Okay, I'm gonna start rolling a different one. But
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah,
I've got a little. I bought this little dice bag a couple of years back when we started playing D&D at the office a bit, and it when you open it up, it can't hold a ton of dice. I have a big, huge, like size of a small watermelon kind of dice bag. Like I have a like a a Crown Royal bag as one does,
right.
as is the tradition. But for work, I had this little bag that's like leather, and when you open it up, it kind of turns almost into a little tiny dice tray. So you just take the dice out, and then you could just roll in that thing.
Yep.
But yeah, otherwise but yeah, that was. I mean, I bought those dice just basically kind of to keep it work. My big giant honking bag, I didn't want to lug back and forth because it's you could
That
hurt
could ruin
somebody
your
with it,
back. Yeah.
and it could, yeah, exactly. You don't want to do that. Let's see. There are various rituals to prime or cleanse dice before use. They range from leaving them in a special place for a day to rubbing them on the tombstone of a deceased game developer. Well, that seems difficult and mean, maybe at the very least. Yeah, no, I think that seems a little bit facetious. But yeah, I do know that people. I mean, I've heard about people putting dice in the microwave. I don't know what that's supposed to
Yeah, that
do.
seems dangerous. Yeah.
Well, it does, yeah. Like especially if there's
But
like
I
metal
have
flecks in it. That's
I
probably
do
yeah.
know there's people that have taken their dice and brought him to where Gary Gygax is buried and like set him on his headstone to kind of be like cleansed or pilgrimaged, to the great GM of the sky.
Did you make that up?
No, no.
No, seriously. Wow, that is
Yeah, there's people
that.
that
All
will,
right.
like when they go and like see where they'll bring their dice and like
I suppose
I
if you
don't
go
know
to Gary Con, then you're like pretty close, aren't you? Or
right.
I don't know if
So yeah,
is he
I'm
buried
guessing
in
like
there? I don't know.
Geneva. I would think he
I don't
would
know.
be somewhere around there. I'm
Yeah,
guessing he's
probably.
buried. Maybe I'm gonna find out later that his ashes were scattered and turned into D20s and or
That's
something. I don't know.
that. Now that you want to talk about like a dinosaur bone kind of situation, like that would be like if it's actually well, there's a little bit of Gary Gygax in here. I
Mhm.
mean, that's morbid and weird,
Mm,
but
yeah.
specifically difficult. Most people don't have that.
As long as they're rolling well, I mean.
Well, yeah, I guess results get results. There is, yeah. Um, you can teach a particularly bad die a lesson by punishing it. This can be putting it in the shame bag or even the freezer. I think that doesn't. Now, that being said, I was playing, I think I've told a story about this before, but I was playing a game against a guy one time. We were playing some 40K, and all he needed, I don't even remember what it was, all he needed to do was not roll 3 ones.
Yeah.
And he rolled 3 ones. And then he picked up the dice and walked out the front door of the game shop, which was actually right near the river, and like just across the street from the river. And he walked across the street and he just threw those dice in the river. So that is definitely punishing those dice and punishing yourself, because now you need more dice. So, whatever.
See, again, the big die is pushing these out to
yes, exactly. Big dice is like telling you, hey, you should really throw these in the river if they don't do and then get more dice. That's a good point. If a bad die is clearly cursed for all eternity, it must be destroyed while the other dice bear witness. Again, that seems mean. If you're going to actually give little tiny personalities to these little tiny dice, making the other ones watch while you kill this one seems
right. Does that mean that the tiny dice are like children? Like I've got like little mini dice?
No. Not like the little tiny. I'm saying the other dice in general, like not the tiny
right,
dice.
But I've got some that are, the big, they're different sizes, and
sure,
like their grandmother,
they make those. I don't know. I don't think. Well, dice don't grow. Do they? I don't think they grow. I'm pretty sure they don't grow. I have like little tiny 5mm on a side D6s, and they're still as small as they were back in the 90s. So
as far as you know,
that's a good point. Be like, where all these big dice come from? That could be weird. Yeah. Let's see here. If you find that one particular die is lucky, you should name it. But not after a significant other. Well, all right, fine. And only use it for very important rolls. And it should also be kept in its own special holder. And you should talk to it when you take it out and put it away. Yes, seriously. I don't cotton to that idea. I think that that's maybe going too far, but whatever. Do you have any dice that you name?
I have not named a die.
No, I don't.
But
I have too many dice. I wouldn't be able to come up with enough names and be able to recognize them, frankly.
Well, I could totally see someone being like, "Oh, it's time to bring out, the slaughter die," and everybody like, "Ooh, the slaughter die! Here it comes."
The issue would be if you put tiny little name tags on them, then I think it would throw off how they roll. That's my opinion. Right. I don't know. Yeah, you don't want to do that. And like I said, otherwise I'd have to take pictures of them so I can remember who's who. It seems like a lot of work.
Well, if you lost them, you'd have to put them on, milk jugs and.
Right. Yeah. No, that's true.
Not just.
So yeah, it's interesting. I think that the dice thing, people definitely have a lot of different weird kind of ideas about dice, and that's fine. But it's not just dice. I think we also see stuff like, well, sometimes it's a question of whether it's superstition or whether it's just. Again, manners. Like manners,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's when we were talking about it, I was like, the very first superstition I remember was my grandfather when we would go and play card games, usually at deer camp or hunting camp or whatever. And I was a younger kid, but that was what we looked forward to, was being able to play cards with the adults at night. And that was one of the things. He's like, "Oh, you never pick up your cards until all the cards have been dealt, your hand, because otherwise you're going to get unlucky cards." And it's so ingrained in my head now that I still catch myself doing it, even when I'm playing like Magic the Gathering or any board games that have cards being dealt or anything. Like if I see someone like pick up their cards right away or pick them up, one at a time while they're being dealt, I'm just like, ooh. They are totally screwed. They are not going to.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I think and some of that could be chalked up to, well, it's unlucky if you do that, but it's also potentially just, I don't know, like maybe bad manners. Like if you're dealing the cards and the person keeps picking them up, you might hit their hand as they're picking up the card as you throw the card
skip
over there.
them while you're trying to deal it out because you're like, oh shoot,
right?
I forgot that there's
Like if you bounce it off their hand, it might flip upside down, and then it screws everything up, right. And it's just so yeah. I in my mind, to me personally, that one sounds like more of an etiquette thing. But I'm sure at some point someone's like, "Oh no, it's unlucky if you do that," because maybe the etiquette thing wasn't helping Bob to remember to do that. Right. But when you tell Bob, "Hey, your cards will be unlucky," then all of a sudden Bob's going to pay attention.
Yeah, that's serious time now. Yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, exactly. I was also told like letting the dice roll off the table is bad luck. Like, oh, you're gonna have bad luck the rest of the night. So again, I think that was to keep me from just throwing the die. It was to kind of
just be a little bit more wary. And yeah, no, I can understand that.
And then like using certain player tokens, like in like Monopoly or D&D, or like I always have to pick red or orange or something like that. Like I've seen that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think some people just have a preference, but the question is the preference just a preference, or is it a preference because you feel you win more when you are
Mhm.
the shoe in Monopoly or whatever,
Yeah.
Is there a shoe in Monopoly? It seems like, or a boot, isn't there?
Boot. Yeah, there was a boot.
Yeah, there
Yep.
you go. Yeah.
I think the boot got retired or something. I don't know.
Like the Monopoly board that we had when I was a kid, I don't think had different, it just had uh, pawns. I don't think we had one with like the little hat and the car and all that junk.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know
I thought that
why.
was like a original thing, like the iron and all that
I
stuff.
think it was original, and then later on, then they just like, well, let's just make them different colors, and then they brought back the original because people complained, and I think that's
Hmm.
when we got ours was in that little middle area where they didn't have that stuff. Because I went over to
Okay.
someone else's house one time, and they had all these weird things, and I was like, I don't, what is all this stuff? The little tiny car and the iron,
The
and they're like,
original
that's
minis.
standard.
I
Yeah,
wonder if maybe
exactly.
have you ever painted your
I've
Monopoly
never
pieces?
painted any of this, no, but I bet you somebody has
No,
certainly.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever done like
Um,
tokens or like a rabbit's foot or anything like that?
oh, I see what you're saying. I haven't. I haven't done any kind of.
Like
I mean,
sacred
I know that
rock,
like
pebble.
in what do you call it? In bingo, right? When you
Hmm.
see that, that's always the thing you see like in
Yeah.
in movies when people are playing bingo and you've got a
They have
bunch
like
of
the
old
little
people there playing and
trolls.
the
Yeah.
troll dolls and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. I don't know if that's a thing that people do as much with tabletop gaming like this.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a possible. I'm sure that there's somebody out there who's got some special. I mean, the dice themselves become tokens in those situations
That's true.
of
Yes.
luck or whatever, but there's probably also somebody who, they have to use their lucky dice bag and they have to use their lucky pencil when they're working on their lucky, D&D character and all that kind of stuff. I
Right.
mean, I could definitely
Lucky
see
pebble
that.
goes in the bag first or something. And
Sure. Yeah. I could put a lucky penny in your shoe. I have no idea. Yeah, there's a lot of things that can go on as far as superstition is concerned. And it's interesting to see that stuff. The question, I guess, is there anything wrong with it? What's the downside, if any, to superstition? I don't know that there's a big downside necessarily.
yeah, I like you said, I think all of them, like if nothing else, are helping kind of game etiquette stuff.
In some
And
situations, yeah.
yeah, like
I
if
mean,
you're
sitting there
like,
and rolling like 25
yeah,
times to make sure this is a good die, that's maybe not so much etiquette 'cause it can get kind of annoying. But a lot of these
right.
other things, definitely, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, other than maybe having you buy more stuff, I don't see how it can be bad.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can help if it helps you kind of calm your mind. If there's even any kind of anxiety about how you're going to do,
Hmm.
but if you're like, well, if I do this stuff, then it'll help. Even if it doesn't
Yeah.
work out. That's the thing about superstitions is because generally, and if we're going to sit down and get down to brass tacks, these things are actually, they're not quantifiable. You can't sit down and say, oh, well, you see, because he moved all of his dice to have the highest numbers, then when he picks them up, they roll better. Like if you could prove that, that would be an entirely new division of science. You know what I mean? And then it
Right.
wouldn't be superstition because
Well,
the
there'd be
super part
classes
wouldn't be
at
there.
all your cons about how to place your
Exactly,
dice
exactly.
and
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, there are people, I watched a short little documentary once about a guy who, for craps, he practices, he has his own craps table, like in his
Mhm.
like garage, and he practices throwing the dice and he holds them a certain way and he sets them a certain way. So like the certain numbers that he wants are up or whatever the deal is. And then he just, over thousands and thousands and thousands of throws, he's worked himself into a situation where he can get a number more frequently than not, the number that he wants. So he
Okay.
sets the
Yep.
dice the way he wants. He holds them exactly the right way. He moves his arm perfectly. They got to bounce off that back wall once and all that kind of stuff. And he can get the numbers that he wants more frequently than not. And it was just interesting because the casinos refuse to throw him out, because
Hmm.
if they do, then they're giving credence to the fact that this works. Counting
Ah,
cards, they'll throw you out for counting cards because it's obvious that counting cards can work and it's been done and all that
right.
kind of stuff. But if you start throwing this guy out because he's doing it this way and it's
Then it
working,
takes away
then
the
other people
what
other people are going to start doing it too, because they're like, well, they're throwing this guy out for doing it, so I'm going to practice it as well. Whereas if you go, yeah, there's no reason for us to throw him out, he's just lucky. It's not because he's doing this and figuring out how to make it so that he can actually throw these very specific dice his very specific way. You know what I mean? But he's
Right.
it's funny. Last time I was in Vegas, I saw a guy who was I think trying to do that, and he kept screwing it up. And I'm not even saying he was rolling poorly, like he was getting bad numbers. I mean, he was like not hitting the other wall. He was like bouncing it like off. I swear to God, he threw one time. He threw an entire like 2 dice completely off the board. Like I don't even think it was just crazy. And like the dealer was finally like, could you just the dealer's not going to yell at you, but the dealer's like, could you just maybe rein it in a little bit. And I know just by watching the way he was like holding his hands and the way he was trying to set the dice numbers up that he'd probably seen the same documentary.
Nice.
But evidently it takes a lot of practice. With the dice that we use generally, specifically in role-playing games where you're not even just talking about D6s, you're talking about D8s, D10s, D12s, D20s. It's just so much more difficult to say, if I hold this dice just this right way, I can get that number on the D20. It seems unlikely, but so
Right.
Besides that, I just don't know if the superstition's one thing, whereas trying to be like weird about the dice and stuff, I could see that being a negative just because, again, you throw the dice off the table more frequently or just annoy your friends, that kind of stuff.
I would say as long as you're not annoying other people, like, oh, I have to roll my dice, 10 times before I have my actual roll, like every time you get the dice. Like if you're doing something like that, you're probably not going to be invited anymore. But most,
Right.
I would say most of the ones we talked about is you're not going to have that.
Like if you roll the die and you're like, well, that was just a practice roll, and you roll it again, well, that was still just a practice roll, and then you roll it the third time, and you're like, okay, that was the real roll because you finally got like a 6 or whatever. I mean, your friends are eventually going to tell you to cut that out. Yeah, exactly. So where's the line drawn there between cheating and the superstition? I mean, it's obviously, like I said, there's plenty of superstitions out there that are not harmful or anything like that. But some of them, sometimes a little bit here and there, can be a bit of an annoyance.
Yeah,
but
I wonder if there's ever been like a fight, when like a party's been like killed off because somebody didn't use the right die when they rolled.
I was going to say when you said, I wonder if there's
die.
ever been a fight, I'm like, an argument amongst gamers? No, that would never happen. But you were talking about an actual battle in the game. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's a story out there of somebody who's like,
probably
they were angry at me because I was doing my special superstition, so I didn't do it, and then we all got killed because the cleric, couldn't do whatever the cleric needed to do or whatever, and we all died.
Yeah, I kept rolling ones, and I wouldn't use a different die, and they were so upset. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah. I mean, I've definitely had friends, especially with one of my GMs, who've been like, could you use different dice? Because the GM was just, kind of like crushing us, because the GM's always rolling.
I have noticed I mean, falsely perceived the whole GM luck where I seem to roll better when I'm the GM than when I'm a player, but I think that's because I'm rolling way more, so I'm more likely to get more stuff.
Yeah, because you're rolling for every encounter as opposed to just the one that your character is involved with. Yeah, that makes sense.
And somebody's planted that in my head, so now I'm like looking for it. So it's what is that called? Like
false equivalency? No.
Yes, thank you. Or
is it?
I think that's.
I'm not sure if it is, but yeah, it's basically where you're trying to find patterns where there aren't necessarily any.
Right, where you're like
because it answers the question that you're asking. Therefore, you're like, oh, see right there. Yeah. No, I can't remember what that called is. Somebody in the comments can definitely tell us. I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
So gaming superstitions are just kind of part of gaming culture, and they do frequently bring us together. Like we were just talking, most of these things, both in the Geek and Sundry article and the stuff that we talked about after, like we're always like, oh yeah, I know somebody who did that, or oh yeah, right. I've done that. I mean, it's one of those situations where. Again, if it doesn't hurt anything and it's something that you enjoy doing, it's part of a shared culture amongst gamers in a lot of situations. I've never been the type of person to be like, we used to play this game years and years ago, this board game that I think was called Don't Stop. And it was kind of a press your luck style game. And you would be rolling dice, and then you would get to a point where you'd be like, all right, I'm not going to push my luck anymore. I'm going to stop here.
Yep.
And we used to have people who would be like, all right, I'm going to push my luck. All right, I'm going to stop here. And then as soon as you'd be like, okay, cool. And they would like write down the number or whatever it was. I forget exactly. They'd be like, all right, I'm just going to roll to see what it would have been. And I'm like, well, that's not what it would have been anymore. You moved your hand, and the variances of table friction and your roll. It's just, you know what I mean? Like that's not
chaos theory.
Exactly. It's not how dice works, but they would do it, and you'd be like, oh, see, I could have gone a little bit further. And you're like, well, sure.
Or look, see.
Or I would have, Exactly. Yeah, it's a good thing I stopped there. Right? Okay, cool. That's fine. Whatever makes you feel good. So yeah, I mean, again, this is a hobby. This is a something that we do for fun. So if it makes it more fun for you to follow some specific superstitions and things like that, but it doesn't make it worse for anybody else, then I don't know that there's necessarily anything wrong with it.
Yeah, have fun with it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again for listening to this episode of the GameFor Podcast. If you've got questions or comments and you're watching on YouTube, please leave a comment below. If you're listening via your favorite podcast player, you just aren't into the whole YouTube comment section thing, then you can feel free to reach out to us via email at podcast@iamgamefor.com. You can also keep up to date with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And check us out our website at www.iamgamefor.com. That is www.iamgamefor.com. Thanks.
Thanks.